Welcome back to episode 25 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. Last time out, we were talking about gin with our good friend David from Double Trouble Drinks. This time, it's spirits of a very different kind. We're going to be talking about ghoulies. Andy, let's talk about your ghoulies first, because actually you're fairly unique. You're fairly unique to this because you're not a big believer in the unexplained, are you?
No, not really. I like things to be proven, and I think it's just one of the things that ain't proven. There's a lot of things in the world that ain't proven, but I think this is a bit, I don't know, not for me at the minute. A few more of these, though, and I might change my mind.
That's it. We're going to see if we can change your mind. So we're going to start off normal as we start off and just do a quick round of introductions because we've got the gang together and we're joined again by our buddy Ken, who was with us for the gaming episode that we did. And just to prove he's not just going to talk about Bob Ross and turnips, he's got plenty of other stuff to talk about. So, Andy, tell us what you're drinking.
I am drinking a Double Trouble gin, tonic, and Vimto.
There you go.
Just like last week.
Gaz?
I am drinking a Birra Moretti out of a genuine Bubba Gump pint glass.
He loves the gump. Ken?
Russian Standard and Dr. Pepper out of my I Want to Believe mug.
Good man. And I thought, seeing as we're going to do the unexplained, I best go for something like King Goblin.
Nice.
Seem most appropriate. 6.6. Ruby beer. Yeah, I'll make less sense towards the end, which is troubling because I don't make a lot of sense at the start. So, certainly myself and Gaz, right, have had we've been interested in the unexplained for quite a while, haven't we?
Yeah, probably. I don't know how long ago it's been. Well, certainly, sort of, I would say 30 plus years ago, we sort of started. I say having a bit of an interest to the extent that we actually made calling cards when we were a bit younger.
You're gonna call?
Literally,
it was. Was it Pickford and Dickinson Parapsychologists or something like that, or something? Was that what?
Pickford and Dickinson Parapsychologists Investigators / Consultants.
There you go. You see. So we had them made up. And spent quite a bit of time going around, sort of, I'll say, just sort of getting them in shop windows and, phone numbers on there for them to go back to Adams and effectively Big Tone and my old man went, "You're not putting my bloody number on there. Get around, take them back down again." We were like, "Oh, come on!"
This was pre-mobile phone, so we had our parents' phone numbers printed on business cards and put up saying that we were parapsychologists, investigators, and consultants. So we put them all around, thinking, this is going to be great. We'll get loads of phone calls. We can go and investigate stuff. They did not see the funny side. Actually, I think my mum threatened me with physical violence, to be fair. And to be fair, not just me. She also threatened Gary with physical violence.
Yeah. So there was a quick sort of a quick retreat to then go to all the places that we'd worked hard to get them in grovelling apology. Yeah, we're going to have to take them down, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Paid £1.50 to have it up in Cavendish.
It costs a fortune.
Yeah. Can I have my money back?
Yeah. Ridiculous expenses.
Yeah. But the story doesn't end there because Gaz and I had a nickname in college, which was...
Oh, it's too embarrassing, mate.
Oh, well, I'm going to share it, so you might as well. The Ghostbusters. That's how Gaz and I were known in college. And the reason for this is basically we weren't the best students, were we, to be fair. And we did a course at college after making a mess of our A-levels to take us on to university. And we were given a choice of tertiary studies that we had to do. Now, that wasn't good enough for me and Gaz. No, we went to the head of year and said, look, basically, none of these interest us. Can we study parapsychology for a year? We'll take it seriously. Just give us a room and we'll study parapsychology.
And to be fair, we probably would have taken it seriously.
Yeah.
All the other stuff we had to do.
Yeah, well, you say that, but they actually said yes. And then we did literally nothing for 12 months, didn't we, really, other than mess around. I mean, that wasn't just parapsychology. That was
across the board, yeah.
That
was like geography.
Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty much the same geography as well, too. But when we did the online gaming one, we had a brief chat, didn't we, afterwards about the different stuff that we were going to look at doing. And Ken, it turned out I've known you for, I don't know, we said last time it was nearly 20 years. And I didn't know you also have an interest in the occult, parapsychology, paranormal, whatever you want to call it, don't you?
Yeah. Very, I think it's one of those where you don't throw it out there unless it's people you actually know. And I think, because I still think it's got that stigma attached to it. It's a bit weird and that's not. But as it's become more and more mainstream and become more accepted, people want to know what's on the other side and if there's a possibility of there being something there for people to either get in touch with or just know that there's something else at the end, not just you're under 6 foot and that's it, you're gone. Your life's just over and nothing happens. So I think people are still, as this year's been mental. So I think the more that people can reach out and think, actually, you know what, I have spoken to Granny XYZ from XYZ time ago, it means that sort of thing becomes more and more prevalent and more acceptable.
Yeah, definitely, I think so. And to be fair, if you search the podcast world, there are, I forget how many, I looked it up the other day, something like 85,100 podcasts, or it might be 185,100 podcasts, but there's certainly a lot of podcasts out there. And the amount that are dedicated to the paranormal and to true crime is huge. And we've not dedicated our podcast to anywhere to any one thing. We like to talk about something different either week, so it's great to be able to do that. It means we don't have a niche community to dig into, but I think we're going to do a couple on the unexplained, that's for sure. And the first one tonight is just setting those stories out. So, Andy, obviously you've said you are a non-believer in this kind of stuff. So I was going to go around and ask people to share some, if they have any personal experiences of the unexplained. Yourself, Andy, I'm going to guess the only spirits you've come across is the gin that you're drinking right now.
Yeah, that's it.
So you don't think that you could be persuaded to be a believer by what we could share tonight?
I'm always open to these things. I do like the Chinese philosophy of everyone's like life energy goes into the planet and can come out again, in different forms, whether it's in like plants or animals or humans or whatever. I do like that sort of mentality, but I don't know. I just need to see proof. The cold hard facts is what I need.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, and it's the interesting thing that's also written on Ken's mug in terms of wanting to believe, because it is, as it is with religions, it's a leap of faith. So, Gaz, then we've been interested. I'm not going to say I'm a believer. I'm not going to say you're a believer. But give us your personal stance and any experiences that you would care to share with us. Don't feel pressure to share any that you don't want to share. Also,
I mean, I suppose I say from being relatively young, I've always had a thought that maybe there might be something. There might be, and you sort of read about stories of people that have seen this, heard this, experienced this, and you're sort of like, really? And the only one really, it's very personal to me. And I always remember reading about if you dreamt that you were falling, uncontrollably falling, that was your heart skipping a beat. And it happens quite naturally in quite a lot of people, but and it's not like, I'm dreaming about falling off a cliff. It's actually, if it's an uncontrollable fall, that your heart's skipping a beat. And I also read that if you actually got to the point where you felt yourself hit the ground or whatever it was, effectively that was it. You were dead, and you were, So I had this, and it was a really strange sort of sensation. I was dreaming one night, and I can remember it absolutely vividly. And we were playing five-side football, and we were playing in Sandbach, where we used to have a five-side team in the league, and so playing five-side football. And then all of a sudden, this great big chasm opened up, and I started to fall uncontrollably. And I didn't want to, and it was weird. And I remember the sensation of physically trying to shout, like help, scream, whatever it was. And I remember trying to scream or shout, Mum, Dad. My mum had passed away and stuff, so. And I remember trying to shout, and I remember the sensation, the feeling of not being able to shout. And then I remember, and I would stand and quite happily take any lie detector test, any test that anybody would ever give me. And I remember going bang and hitting the ground. And I opened my eyes, and to this day, I am convinced my mum was standing at the end of the bed. Absolutely 100% convinced she was standing at the end of the bed. And I think I remember doing like a double take, because I'm lying in bed and I looked up and convinced she was there. And I'd be happy to take any sort of lie detector test, anything else. And then I remember being awake, and actually consciously being awake. And again, no word of a lie, I was drenched in sweat. And I mean physically drenched. The sheets were wet, the cushions, pillows were wet, and I was physically sweating. And it's something that made me then start to think, well, did I not? Was it, was it a shadow of a coat hanger on a wardrobe door? Was it a reflection out of a window? What? And to this day, it's something that for me is unexplained. I won't say it was definitely in my mind. That was, and I saw my mum, and she'd obviously passed away, and so was that just my subconscious mind thinking I saw my mum? Did I actually see her? And I don't know, because I haven't investigated it as such. Can it be proven? No. Is it something that I honestly believe I saw? Yes. I can't really marry those two things up. So that's the only personal experience I've had, other than having a general interest in things like the X-Files and the occult, and as a kid doing, you do the Ouija board and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of doing something personal to me and an experience that I've had, that for me just made me think, actually, is there something? And I've told lots of other people, I don't mind talking about it and stuff, but it's that one thing that actually I'm convinced that mum was at the end of the bed, effectively. It
wasn't just a dream. It was something else. Yeah.
No, 100%. It wasn't 100%. It wasn't me dreaming that my mum was at the end. It was me being not in control of the sensations that I was feeling. And actually, the dream was, we were playing five side in sandbag. That was the dream, and I remember it. That was the dream. And then all of a sudden, I just remember falling, and I remember physically trying to go, shout, Mum, Dad, and I physically couldn't shout. And then I remember going bang, and then Mum was there, and then I was awake, and it was just literally just drenched, absolutely drenched. So 100% not a dream. What it was, don't know. Did I see her? I think I did. Can somebody prove to me I didn't? Maybe, but that got me thinking, there might be something. And from being interested as a kid in the occult, it sort of made me sort of start to think a bit more. So yeah, that's my only real personal experience. But yeah, that very personal to me. But yeah, very quite a strong, powerful sensation, feeling, and emotion.
Cool, and appreciate you sharing that as well, guys, because there's a lot of personal emotion in there. And Ken, then moving on to your good self.
How long you got? To sort of segue back what Gaz was saying. There's like he says that the experience he had, he was absolutely 100% adamant that's what happened. I have a similar experience from being 5 or 6 years old. My dad died. We used to live on in Macclesfield and Western Avenue, and my mum, as a single parent in the 80s, there was no rule book, so she used to, if we played up at night, we used to sleep out on the landing. So the landing would have been there's a back window, and then the bedroom window, and then my mum's bedroom was at the far end, and the bathroom was at the end of the landing. And I remember being told by my mum to sleep on the landing. And obviously this had been recently, just after my dad had died. And I remember sitting there on the landing, like, huddled up, and I was thinking, right, okay, and to this day, same as Gaz, I'll take it. A lie detector test, no question, not a problem. I will happily say that my dad walked out of my mum's room and walked towards me and smiled and disappeared as he came towards me.
Wow.
Not even, it's like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, the electrical feeling. And he's just like, he literally walked out, looked at me, smiled at me, and then just, as he came towards me, just literally just evaporated. And as Gaz said, was that my brain telling me that's something I needed to see or something like that? As Gaz said, 100%, that is what happened. I have had many experiences in my old, where I used to live with Don in Macclesfield, Stuff Highball Road. I've had moments where I've woke up like that, with a feeling of dread, with a feeling of terror, with a feeling of something's not right. I'm waiting for someone to come in my room. I'm waiting for someone to come in and do something horrible. I've been woken up at one point in the night where it felt like someone had put what can I describe as like a burlap sack over my head and punched me in the back of the head. And I've woke up thinking, what the heck? That I've seen things go past my window. My bedroom window, was 10 to 15 foot above the ground. Something went past my window on the inside, grinning.
Yeah.
And the first time I got, which I highly recommend, is an SB7 spirit box, which basically goes through radio frequencies forwards and backwards, depending on the speed you want, so that sort of like phrases and things that come through can either, if you're attuned, attuned to it, if you want to believe that sort of thing, then you can ask a question and then you'll get an answer via the radio frequencies. It may not be immediately, you may not get one at all, but it gives you the option. And I think when the first time I got it, I left it, my mum bought it me for Christmas, and I left it in my room, and I recorded 3 hours of just what appears to be just static noise. But there's phrases and conversations going on in there. I woke up in the middle of the night hearing the words, "Don't worry, we'll get him next time." There's nobody else in my room but me.
Yeah.
The dad one is the crazy one that just always will stand out to me, because I can still, if I close my eyes, I can still see him coming down this dark and book that was on the landing, and he's there and he smiles at me and just vanishes.
Yeah.
But there's other unexplained things that I've seen. I've seen a UFO. There's no question I've seen it. I've been to a crop circle. Those crop circles are just dead air. There is nothing there. There is just wrapped corn and all that sort, and it's mental. The sort of stuff you can just be involved with just by, as Andy says, just having an open mind.
Yeah.
Going there and just exploring, just saying, right, I'm not going to discredit anything. I'm just going to go and experience what I experience. And some people experience nothing. And some people experience life-changing or mentality-changing events that will just be like, I can't physically explain that. And I can't mentally explain that. And I'm sure that as we're going back to the electricity going back into the planet and energy going back, the energy changes. And that's, I think, a lot of people explain that as when they have these experiences, the energy in the room changes. It becomes electrically charged, or the air becomes colder, or it becomes warmer. And these sort of things can be explained by the changes in electrical fields and literally just something being there that is actively making a difference to the environment around you. And as I say, my dad, I will always say, I will take any lie detector test. I saw him, he smiled at me, he disappeared. And at that point, I was 5-6 years old. And for me, that was the start of something. I've watched every ghost show going. I've read books till I've learned everything, and I still have a massive interest in it. And I think I always will. And I think anybody who wants to discuss it or talk to me about it, feel free. I can talk your ears off. But I think for some people, it's like I said, like Andy says, you want solid proof. It's like children being born but knowing their past lives. Like maybe for a future podcast, maybe post-hypnotic regression. But in time and seeing if there is a potential of who you were. Were you somebody else in the past? Have you experienced things at a point where that your brain, although it's your brain, it's still genetically wired that you have memories from another time.
Yeah,
you read about
and it is that reincarnation sort of, and I suppose it's the
going back into the planet.
The which is slightly different. The deja vu. It's like, you know what, this is weird. I've sat, in this chair with that drink, with Andy, with you guys, and it's that sensation of I've 100% been here before, done this, seen this, and it might be memory that's triggered it off or whatever. But I was like, and I know me and Adam had always had an interest in the occult stuff, and that stemmed from which can be a little off the mythos and sort of Lovecraftian type sort of occult stuff. And I was a bit like Andy, sort of, okay, on the one side I got this sort of interest, but was I convinced? I was a bit like Andy in as much as, I need convincing, really. Yeah. And then obviously the sensation of feeling the sort of the experience that I had with my mum being there, not quite tipped the balance fully, but made me more appreciative of actually, what it could be. And don't get me wrong, I'm 100% so my mum, as you said, Ken, nobody will ever convince me that did not happen. Whether, and as you said again, whether that was my mind, whether that was a memory, or whether that was actually paranormal and my mum was there, it could be either of those things, but absolutely nobody will convince me that she was not there at that time. And it was an uncontrollable sensation. It wasn't me dreaming she was there. It was very much, I'm in a situation, I'm in an experience that actually was horrendously disturbing and frightening, and having no control over any of it. It was the feeling of not quite helplessness, but I actually had no control over what was happening. And I never felt as though it's threatening in any way. It's my mum, and she just sort of stood there but she was there. And so I think I've now gone more to that. Actually, I'm probably more open-minded about the fact that there could be stuff. And I'm not 100% that way yet, where I'm definitely convinced. But it's, after that experience, I'm sort of leaning more towards actually, that there could be. And you hear lots of stuff, as I say, about your deja vu, you being there before your reincarnation, and the stories about being reincarnated and previous lives and memories and stuff. So I think there's too much for there to be nothing. There's too many in my mind now. There's too many coincidences and too many things that happen that are unexplained for there to be nothing.
Yeah. I'm very much online with what Andy says as well, because I need convincing. I'm going to share a couple of my experiences as well now shortly, which, to be fair, do pale a little bit into insignificance given the stories that you guys have just shared. But very much like Andy, I need convincing. I need to understand why this happens. I can't just accept that it is an external realm influencing our current existence. I need scientific proof. How we prove that, I don't know. But like I say, mine that I'm going to share with you now are fairly insignificant given yours. I used to work as a kitchen porter many, many years ago in the Manor House Hotel, which is a place which is allegedly haunted and famed to be haunted. And obviously, as a kitchen porter, you're often there quite late in the night. And on this occasion, I was there, and it's about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we talk about sensations, and again, it's talking about belief, that feeling that somebody is there. And I heard the doors go, kitchen doors, obviously they swing, they're not on a handle so that waiting staff can move in and out. And I heard the door go, and I turned around thinking, well, it must be the night porter because there's nobody else here other than me. And the door was swinging, and there's nobody there. This is sort of thing. Well, 1:30. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I just want to get brushed up and get myself home. So I went to get the brush, and the dustpan and brush was leant against or behind the banister. So it was leant against the wall at an angle of about, an angle where it couldn't physically fall. And at the point I reached for it, it tipped onto the floor. And that was it. I was out of there. I thought, forget this. I didn't even sign out. I don't care if they'll pay me for this shift. I don't want to be here. It made me feel that uncomfortable. And then the other one that I wanted to share was my uncle has a cottage in North Wales. I think it's more for Neffin, something like that. And Kim and I had gone to stay there many years ago now. And we'd heard stories of a few things. There were people who stayed there felt like there was, another presence there. Someone else was staying there. In fact, my cousin Jack, who T-shirt company kindly sponsors this podcast, he lived in Abersock for a while. Well, he worked in Abersock for a while and was living out in Morphethneffin, and actually ended up moving into the pub because he felt uncomfortable staying there. Like he'd seen a few things that made him feel uncomfortable. And anyway, the first night that we stayed there, my auntie was there with her sister and her sister's daughter. So they were staying over that night, and they were going on, and so they could just sort of show us the ropes because it's the first time we stayed there. So we'd sort of said, well, we'd heard a few stories. Is it haunted? What have you? And she was relating this story how they'd bought the house from an estate because the lady who'd lived there before was a white witch. And there was a pile of stones in the window that nobody touched. Literally, everybody said, don't touch that pile of stones. It was put there by the white witch. It's some kind of spell. Don't mess with it. And this is what they told. And you sort of think, yeah, whatever. And then my auntie said, apparently as well, she was well known to be the village bike. And at that point, bear in mind, this is literally in the middle of nowhere. There's this huge thud against the door. So we all ran out the door, and I'm telling you now, there was nobody anywhere to be seen. So this wasn't just me witnessing and feeling something uncomfortable. There was 4 of us there. And Kim will tell you, I hope my uncle doesn't listen to this because we've not actually stayed there since. Scared the bejesus out of us. But yeah, honestly, it made Kim feel that uncomfortable. We stayed there for a couple of nights afterwards, and we always felt like we weren't there alone. It was quite strange. But much like Andy, I need some convincing. I want to know why I felt there was a bang against that door. I want to know why that tipped over, because to accept that it is something otherworldly, well, that's not how the human brain works, is it? We need empirical testing. We need scientific proof. So to say, I much like Gaz, am I a believer? Well, no, I'm not, because I want further evidence. But we're curious minds, and I think that's something that we'd like to look into, isn't it? Which is why, all jokes aside, like we did at the start, we were interested in parapsychology. And yes, we were known as the Ghostbusters and what have you. But it was something that we were genuinely interested in because it's, as the title says, it's unexplained. There is no explanation for it. It's solving a puzzle and it's solving a riddle. Yes, it might be somebody screwing with you. But like Gaz says, too many coincidences for it not to be something a little bit different. It's any of that sort of ring true with you, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you just look at technology and how it's always progressing, and people do tests on things is always going to improve. We don't know everything about the human mind. We don't know, we've not mapped the bottom of the seas and stuff. So there's always, stuff we'll never explain, just yet anyway. But no, it's just the detail you both went into, well, all three of you went into with reliving that experience. It sort of shows how much it impacted you, and it's stuck with you. And no matter however long ago it was, you remembered every detail around it. So there is that element of, what the hell was that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think, I mean, for me, when I talk about, Kenn mentioned, seeing UFOs and people have said they've been abducted, but and so on and so on and so on. If it was one person, then you'd be a bit like, Yeah, all right, mate. You know, you've been smoking a bit too much of the sweet leaf, or you've had one too many beers, whatever. But the fact that it's thousands of people that have said it, you think, what? Every one of those people are nut jobs or whatever, you know. So, and that's what I was talking about. It seems too many. I know some people jump on the bandwagon and stuff, but you know, you get a guy in Midwest America, and you get a guy in Australia, you get a guy in Russia, and you get a guy, you know, and these people have had like no contact with each other, and particularly the days before telecommunications and stuff, you know, and they have the same experiences, and you're like, really? Like people that are like thousands and thousands of miles apart, and that's what I can't. And my rational side of my brain is trying to make sense of what you're hearing and what you're reading and what you're seeing. But there's a part of you that thinks, but it actually doesn't make any sense other than there has to be something that is making those things happen. Yeah. Because, as I say, if it was one guy, everybody would be like, oh my God, lock him up, put him in a straitjacket, throw away the key.
Yeah.
But when it's thousands and thousands of people, I don't see how there's an explanation that covers each of those thousands. Andy, being obviously the skeptic, might have an argument to that. I don't know. I'm happy to, but the fact that there's so many occurrences of various things that are unexplained, I don't see how it can not be something.
I was just thinking that one thing it could be is we're as a world we're sort of told what's the normal. So you're like, this is normality, and you operate in that's normal. Anything out of that is, you know, abnormal or whatever. Maybe like the spirit world, or I don't know what you want to call it. Maybe that is like a real thing, but we're just told that's you know, that's not normal. This is how you should be living. Maybe it is like, you know, like when you see medieval stories of Merlin, you know, with magic. Maybe that was normal back in the day, and maybe we're just told that, you know, you live in this little channel, and that's don't worry about all that stuff. So
I think you're programmed to think. You know, society has been programmed over a number of years, and we have been programmed over a number of years to think and act in a particular way. And when you see something or feel something or experience something that doesn't conform to that, I think you do band it into the, well, that's unexplained, that's a bit weird sort of thing. Now so I think you're right, and as much as it might be a society thing, it might be a generational thing, it could be a human being thing. It's just that might be how we're programmed to think, and actually we can't think of outside the box as such.
Well, we're definitely programmed that way, because, like I say, it only came from a conversation from when we were doing the gaming podcast, and we were talking to Kenn about, you know, he said he'd love to be more involved, and I said, you know, we're looking at doing this, and we're actually looking at doing one on the unexplained. Known the guy for 20 years, and it's not a conversation we've ever had, because obviously it's a taboo subject, so we've not talked about it in 20 years, and yet we both have an interest in it.
Absolutely. I think there's an interesting correlation between the people who have similar ideas are attracted to each other. And I've known you for 20 years, but there's obviously a reason why we're still friends. And there's obviously something there underlying, which is still keeping us friends, still keeping us talking, and still meaning something to both of us. That's unexplained.
True enough.
Neither of us, it's just like we have this friendship where we can go years without talking, but then we'll pick up the phone and it's just like nothing has changed. And I think there's a lot of things. It harks back to what Andy's saying about energy. And I think that's a massive part of it, because every experience is subjective. It just depends on the person and what they believe and what they think, and whether it changes who they are or what they think or things like that. But it is still seen as a weird, odd subject. And I think it's like tarot cards and that sort of thing. And that's sort of seen as still very weird, and like people burning sage or incense and stuff like that. That's seen as a bit cookie and a bit different. But as more and more people look into things that are going on, And the experiences they have themselves and talk about it, the easier it becomes for the subject to be more visual. As Andy was saying, technology is madly important now, because you can now, instead of it just being, oh, it's a black and white photo of a guy sat in a chair from 1910, we can sit there now in real time and see temperature changes on people, temperature changes in windows, temperature changes on walls. We can see in every spectrum of light. So we get full spectrum cameras, so we can take a picture of everything that's going on at that particular point in time in that spot. There's an interesting video series on YouTube called, I believe it's called The Ghosts of Carmel, Maine, which is a guy who lives in a house, and he has shadow people, and there is in his house, and there's one where this shadow person, he literally walks in his room and there's some curtains there, and he literally says, oh, he's there, and this black figure shadow leaps out of the window and disappears under his bed. And the first time I saw that was terrifying. Shadow people are terrifying. It's like Gaz was saying earlier on with regards to, it's not terrifying or it's not scary. I have only ever had in my experience in my life one occasion of what I discuss as sleep paralysis. Yeah. I lay there in bed and I woke up and I was paralyzed. Couldn't move. My brain was awake. My brain was like, can I move? And I was just like, I'm alive. I'm in my own breath, and my body just would not. And that was terrifying.
Yeah.
Purely terrifying, because there was nothing, but there's no control over that. Yeah. I couldn't physically move. My brain was like freaking out, because it's like, why am I lay here and I can't move my arms? What's going on? And I think there's is it where people become, there was a spate a few years ago where people were used to, is it lock people in their bodies? That's got to be one of the most terrifying experiences ever, because there's no way of getting them out. Apparently, there's no way to actually get them back out. So
was that locked-in syndrome or whatever? It's so they're conscious but they literally are just like, and they
absolutely. But that sort of thing is utterly terrifying. But that comes from just that experience. I would not wish it on anybody ever, because it is truly the most terrifying experience I've ever had. And I know I've not done anywhere near as exciting things as lots of other people, but for me, that was the most terrifying thing in my entire life.
Yeah.
But the feeling of terror, the feeling of just fear of being completely out of control, that's the feeling I felt when I saw that first video. And there's literally the shadow figure, literally the blinds move, there's a shadow figure there, and he leaps under the bed. And it was just, and I looked like, and I got goosebumps, and the whole works. It was just like, that is truly unbelievably scary, because that implies, maybe it's not, maybe it is a spiritual, well, maybe from a physics standpoint, maybe it's a different timeline.
Yeah.
Maybe timelines cross over, and you get a situation there where whatever life we're living right now, maybe could, what we can perceive as ghosts or the unexplained, could that be a timeline crossing over where the ghost is actually just a visualization of somebody else in a different timeline doing something completely, like with your dustpan and brush?
Yeah.
Did somebody in a different timeline knock it over in their timeline and knocked it over in yours because it merged? So it's like you say, with the parapsychologist side of it and the physics side of it, the two are intertwined. Physics is a massive part of it as well, because of the world we live in. And the energy that we put into the world and take out. There can't just be. There has to be a balancing act. It can't just be all take or all give.
It's an interesting theory, that, to be fair, and I guess it's one of the sciences, if you can call it a science, which I don't suppose enough study, enough research is devoted to it because of that, like you say, that kooky thing. Maybe, Gaz, you and I probably should have put a little bit more effort in when we're doing it as a tertiary study. I don't know. But we've got the opportunity now to view this as a case study. So if we were to take this forward, say, how comfortable would we be investigating something, the four of us, going out and having a look at something where these experiences have been recorded by multiple people? how comfortable would we be going in and looking at those sort of things? Would you guys be interested in that sort of thing?
I think Andy is a skeptic. I think I'm more than happy to, and I'm sure Gaz is. Andy's the skeptic, and yourself as well as it's like it's up to you guys. If you guys want to, I mean, I'm sure me and Gaz would have a great time doing it. I'd love to.
I think it's strange because I think it's one of those what Kenn said a minute ago. Different experiences, or sorry, the same experience can be perceived by different people in different ways. So we could go to somewhere, and whether or not we would go somewhere knowing that it's haunted, let's say, or there's some, and me and Kenn go there, and we interpret things in a different way, knowing that it's been haunted because we associate with that, and you and Andy might associate it with something else because even though you know that other people have experienced it being haunted before, you don't subscribe to that, and therefore you might perceive that experience, and you might come the following morning or whatever and say, oh no, well I heard it but I didn't really feel anything. Me and Kenn could be like, oh my god, really, did you not see that? Did you not feel that sensation? And it would be interesting. So I think the simple answer is yes, I would be interested, even if it was just to see that if something did happen or there was an experience, as to how perhaps a skeptic would view that, and have you viewed that in the same way that me and Kenn might.
Well, this is why I really wanted Andy involved with this, because when we talked about it, when we were talking about it that night, weren't we? You can see the look on his face. You can see the smirk coming on his face now that he wasn't bought into any of this. So this is why I want somebody with a different perspective and a different mindset to ourselves. And, Andy's a good, honest, straight talking guy. So if he thinks we're being douchebags, he'll say, no, come on, guys. That's not what it was. It was this. So, Andy, we really need you to be bought into this idea. Is that something you'll be up for?
Yeah. I said I'm open-minded.
Yeah, cool. So, has anybody got any suggestions? Obviously based in the UK. Anybody got any ideas of places that we could visit? And
not necessarily spooky in terms of haunted, but somewhere that did scare the heebie-jeebies was a place that me and Andy used to call the house that isn't there anymore now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't haunted, but holy heck, did it give us the heebie-jeebies a couple of times. But joking aside, obviously there was that place. But joking aside, I mean, there's a place in, is it Nantwich? Is it what did I say it was called? Is it Church's Mansion? Is that the restaurant? Is it like a Victorian place, sort of big, or might be sort of Victorian building? They've just reopened it. I think that's rumored to be haunted.
Very old black and white building. If you know Nantwich at all, if you're heading in from Stapley, it's on the left. Recently sold for somewhere around about $1 million.
Yeah, I think there's a chef in there that's wanting to get a bit of a Michelin star. So I think it's because it used to be amazing and it's went in the doldrums a little bit, and it's recently been sold, and this guy's bought it again and he's trying to make a go of it. But I'd heard rumours and whispers that I mentioned it to a guy from work actually, and he lives in Nantwich, and he said that place has had people say that they've experienced things and it's meant to be haunted and stuff. So potentially that's one. I don't know. Closer to home, was it Sandbach? Was it somewhere?
Yeah, I've got a couple of places as well in Macclesfield and Sandbach. But Andy, have you got anywhere that you wanted to mention? Have you?
No, there was I think we have talked about a while back. There's a B&B somewhere. It's like the scariest place in the UK that you can stay there for the night, but the name escapes me at the minute. But
well, the obvious thing is just go and ask Yvette. She lives in Sandbach.
This is very true. Yvette Fielding literally lives. If you're not familiar with Most Haunted, then, well, goodness gracious, go and watch those old episodes. Derek Akora, sadly no longer with us. Yvette Fielding, about 5 minutes from mine and Gaz's house. A few more beers, we might go and knock her up and try and get her on the next
That podcast. Sounds so wrong, guys.
Yvette, I apologise for that. Yeah. Kenn, do you have any places in mind?
The only place that sort of stands out to me in Macclesfield alone is the Bayou.
Yeah, well, that's again one of the places that I mentioned. Like I say, Macclesfield. So Bayou, what do you know about the place then, Kenn?
It's it's one of the. It's gone back to the 16th century. It's a proper black and white building. It's historically significant. It's one of those bigger. It's one of those nicer buildings in Macclesfield. But obviously, it's a pub, so it's right on Chestergate. It's just like it's apparently it's just like the situation about a ghost, a young boy called Billy. He's said to haunt it. There's a ghost of a grey lady. I believe there's marks or rope marks on one of the eaves in the attic, and apparently the cellars are also haunted because it used to be a hideout for a priest when Catholics were persecuted. So there's a lot of history to the Bait Hall, and even just being in there it's very tight. It's very close. There's a lot of it has an odd feel about it. It's not the type of place. It's not like your old local pub where you just walk in and it says like, "Oh, that's relaxing." Going in there, it does feel like there's something not quite right about the place. Whether it's the air, whether it's the building itself, it is stationed in the centre of Macclesfield, so I'm sure there's enough history. There's certainly enough history in the area to make it a focal point. And of course, it goes back to the energy thing as well with regards to that. Obviously, there's obviously tunnels and stuff like that, but water as well is an excellent conduit for this sort of thing as well. So obviously Macclesfield with the Bolland and stuff like that, there's water flowing by and in Macclesfield. So you've always got that sort of like energy, I say stream, for want of a better word, going through. And if there's a possibility to go there, or in fact, if there's a possibility to go anywhere and actually just do sort of like, I think that'd be that'd be an awesome experience for not just me, Gaz, for all four of us. I think it'd be amazing to go and do it. And I'd say two skeptics and two, I would say, believers would go there and just like Gaz quite rightly said, we may go there and have an amazing time, but like, wow, did you see that shadow go past the window? And both of you might be like, yeah, but there's a cat outside or something. And it's like, yeah, okay, or there's a noise over there. What could that possibly be? Oh, that might be. And it's just like, oh, there's just like some rustling going on. But I think it'd be interesting to go in there, because I think we're all fairly level-headed.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit and just be just like, this is the most amazing. We'll I always try and debunk things before I believe they're real.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way of thinking.
I think, you would think that the four of us are more likely to go there, spend a night there, wake up in the morning and go, actually, no, nothing happened, but we had a good night with a couple of beers and crack on. Do you know what I mean? That's probably more likely, but I think it's the
I heard some rustling, but I turned a blind eye.
I'm sure I felt somebody in my bed, but I just saw that was like Big Grey again or something. You know what I
mean? You get one.
So, but I think, and whilst that might be more likely, is we have a couple of beers and we wake up in the morning and just actually nothing happened. It's that actually, if there was an experience or there was a sensation or something did occur, it would be interesting to see the different take that we all had on it, on the assumption that actually we all experienced it, if that makes sense, sort of thing, because obviously something might happen in that room or in that room, and we might not necessarily all be privy to what actually happened, but it might be interesting to talk about it the following morning. So, well, actually, this happened. Yeah. And then, Andy or Adam would be more likely to say, yeah, actually, I heard that, but I just thought it's just a bit of water dripping off a pipe or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
just going back to the pub itself, like Ken says, dates back to 1525. Oliver Cromwell himself has stayed there. The owner has experienced a ghost called Richard, who has threatened his life, which goes to a little bit about what Ken said about the recordings of We'll Get Him Next Time. It is, in terms of how much you buy into these sort of things, a list of the top 100 most haunted places in Britain. It ranks as number 3, which I found quite interesting. Staff have been reporting that they felt like somebody was touching them and they couldn't see anybody there. There's poltergeist activity with glasses being thrown from the cells. And like I say, Ken mentioned a young boy who supposedly haunts the place and plays hide and seek, or has played hide and seek with the owner's daughter. There's a ghost of a grey lady. And interestingly enough, they actually called in a bunch of parapsychological Investigators, paranormal. That could have been us, Gaz. It could have been us.
You know what?
Yeah, but these were based in Wythenshawe, and they came and investigated it and said that they'd come across the spirits of 13 ghosts. I don't know if they watched the film before, the Rob Zombie film before, but yeah, but there was 13 ghosts apparently inhabited the place. So I think that is definitely a possibility. The other one is the one that we talked about last time. Andy brought it up. Old Hall Sandbach. Again, this is another famously haunted place. It was also featured by Yvette Fielding on her Most Haunted program, Derek Cora, season 5. Did you get a chance to watch it, Ken? By the way, I did.
I've been. We've had a bit of a shift rater. We've had a rater changeover at work, and I've been off. So it's been Sam's birthday this weekend. So
okay,
the birthday today, obviously, but we celebrated the last few days. So in fairness, I'm not going to lie to you and say yes, I did. No, I didn't.
A fair play. Well, happy birthday, Sam. Anyway, I know we said it at the start, but we'll say happy birthday.
She's gone downstairs now, so I'll try and keep it quiet.
Right, yeah. Okay. So, Old Hall Sandbach, somewhere literally just up the road from us, around the corner, I should say. And Yvette Fielding, obviously got a little bit lazy because literally that one is about 2 minutes from her house, isn't it?
Yeah, in 2004, apparently. Apparently, there's a cellar, there's a tunnel, apparently.
There is. Well, Andy, you used to live, did you not used to live in Sandbach nearby? And you live very near the church, which is famed to have tunnels that lead to this building.
Yeah, so from my bedroom, I could see, obviously, the church and the graveyard, and then the old hall as well. From our terraced street was supposed to be, I think there were monks or something like that, so there's all supposed to be tunnels under the stairs going all through the church and stuff like that. But yeah, it's quite relaxing being near the church. It's always quiet and it's nice. Maybe that's the energy that it gave off as well. I don't know. But
lovely looking building, but again, it's black and white. It's wood. There is some suggestion that wood is actually a very good recording. I say device, but material for noises, residual energies, and if everything is right, the timing's right, the temperature's right, you will get these residual recordings of stuff due to the wood. But it looks like a beautiful building. Yeah,
like Ken says, it's a very, very old building. It was built as a mansion, and actually a part of it burnt down, and then it reopened as a hotel and a pub. Originally built in 1656. But the interesting thing about this is you can, as far as I know, still stay there now. And room 11 is the room that is reported to experience the most hauntings. So people have reported a 90-year-old lady sitting by the side of the bed, something my younger brother would love, but do your jokes on that one.
Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, Angela Lansbury, yeah. He's got a thing for Angela Lansbury, a dirty old beggar. Numerous guests have reported waking at 3 a.m. and feeling like the bed was on fire. Orbs seen around the fireplace, which ties in apparently with where the tunnels lead into. They lead into the fireplace, which obviously the monks, when they needed to escape, and the parishioners or whoever need to escape persecution, they escape from the church and then into the old hall opposite, which unfortunately one of the places where the tunnel is into the fireplace. I'm not being funny, but I think you can you sort of see where that one went wrong, can't you?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, that seems right. Just as a side note, because obviously orbs and stuff, Gaz, where do you stand on orbs? Do you believe they're residual? Do you believe they're, or do you think they're just environmental and just a side effect?
If I'm honest, I mean, I haven't done a lot of sort of reading research. To me, are they natural or possibly? To be honest, I haven't got a massive opinion sort of either way. I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, I think there's enough evidence is the wrong word. I think there's enough literature about that would suggest they have to have some importance, but I don't know. I wouldn't be. I don't know enough about it really to sort of comment strongly either way.
No, I just thought I'd ask the question. I mean, if that's where you're thinking, is that where you're thinking of going, Adam? You think you're going the old hall?
Well, I just think it's a possibility. Obviously, whether it's feasible now in the terms of the pandemic, where we could get a room there or get a couple of rooms and then converge on room 11. I mean, how would you feel? Would we contact them and said, look, we're a podcast, we're interested in investigating this, or would you just turn up and then all... Hopefully they don't listen to this podcast.
I think you'd have to... I think you would probably have to go down the route of probably telling them.
Yeah. It's the right
because it's probably the right thing to do. But B, actually, you know, if you booked it, there's no guarantee you'll get room 11. In which case, it's like, well, actually, we're going there, and actually, what we really want to do is get into room 11. And
could get a few stories out of them as well.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. True.
You know, you can't go and knock on room 11's door and say, oh, excuse me, Mr. Smith or whatever, you know, do you mind if we just descend in your room and stay there for the night type thing? So I suspect if it was me, I think I would be more comfortable going down the route of actually we need to say, look, we're doing some podcasts, we've got a bit of an interest in, we've got a couple of guys that have more of an interest than others, but as a four, we would be we'd quite like to sort of possibly experience, you know, where you stand, can we book room 11 and we'll book the room next to it or whatever, or on the floor above it or floor below it or whatever, I don't know.
Taking it to the next level then. Theoretically then, we've got this room booked. How would you feel about doing a Ouija board? What are your feelings on that?
Go on, guys.
I would be...
My feelings on Ouija boards are, they're one of those things that I've never, and I've never done. I don't think they're something to be messed with. I believe there's enough. It started a century ago about just a board game.
It's very true. It was never designed as a conduit for contacting anybody. It was literally a game that you play in the parlours where you move, and it was supposed to be tapping into your subconscious. And obviously, it's become something else since. I mean, I can tell you of a Ouija board experience I've had myself, and I've got to be honest, it made me feel very, very uncomfortable. So it was me, my brother John, and our good buddy Jeff. His parents were away. We were young kids at the time. We were staying over his place. Yes, we'd all had a few beers. I'm not going to say we hadn't. So we sat down. We sat down at the kitchen table. We set up the Ouija board, which I think we used Scrabble tiles and an old glass. You know, so it was a bit of ghetto. So we all stuck our fingers on the glass, and I think Gaz, you and I have probably done a few over the years. And literally, you got that right. Who's pushing the glass? Who's sitting his fingernails going white and what have you.
Fingernails and white fingernails. It's like, it's not me. It's like, well, the top of your fingernails go white, then you're pressing on the glass hard. That thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we did this thing, and now he had a dog called Oscar, and he'd made sure he'd locked his dog in the kitchen. So at this point, we locked up all the doors of the house. We'd spooked ourselves out, telling ourselves stories of the occult and everything. And anyway, so this glass started moving around and spelling out different things that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, if I'm going to be honest. And next minute, Oscar starts going absolutely apeshit at the window outside. Okay, so he wasn't locked in the kitchen. He was in the window outside. So we're like, well, this isn't right. Because this dog, who was fairly placid, was going absolutely nuts. So Jeff said, I'm just going to go check, because I swear to God I locked him in the kitchen. And he came through white as a ghost. And I'm getting hairs on the back of my neck standing up honestly as I'm telling this, because he came through and he was white as a ghost. He said, I swear to God, as I've gone to get the back door, which is left wide open, it is slammed shut in front of me. So we said, right, that's fair enough. Right, let's break the glass. That's apparently how you do it. You break the glass to unleash the spirit. So we got the glass and we took it into his garage and threw it. John threw it as hard as he could on the floor, and the thing bounced in front of us. This gas bounced 4 or 5 times. We're like, this is not good. At which point, John picked up a hammer and smashed the shit out of it. But that's John. But I'll be honest with you, that is one of the most uncomfortable feelings in my life, because this dog had reacted to something. It was terrified or something. And it was genuinely, and I take Jeff's word, Gaz, you know Jeff, don't you?
Yeah.
He wasn't a guy to screw around with.
No.
This guy was genuinely terrified. And literally, we were staying over in the lounge, me and John were sleeping downstairs, and even though Jeff had a bedroom upstairs because he lived there, insisted on sleeping in the lounge with us because he felt like uncomfortable in his own house.
The only thing, I mean, Ouija board, I mentioned it earlier, we've all done it as a kid, and similar sort of story, and I don't even remember sort of who was there. I think Sid was there, and there was a few friends, and one of their mothers had got a Ouija board, a proper one that had got spelled out with a yes and a no and the letters and the numbers and stuff, and I'm trying to remember what was his name. I can't. Anyway, and there was a glass on, like a sort of tumbler glass, so you put your fingers on it. And actually, we tried beforehand, and it was a bit like imagine like a glass on like a matting. It actually was quite hard to push, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not something you can push easily. And again, we'd spooked ourselves terribly. We'd had some beer and stuff. We'd be telling stories, and there's on the back in it. We started to be a bit, and it went back to what Ken was saying about actually you sort of felt as though the atmosphere changed a bit, and people started to think, oh God, is this the right thing to do? Do we know what we're doing? Is it going to be dangerous? What happens if something happens to one of us? Blah, 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 blah. You go through all these horrible sort of scenarios, and we basically put them to back on man, did it anyway. So we sort of started and you go through, and typically, is there anybody there? And then somebody laughs and it's like, for fuck's sake, you don't, and we got to the point where we were sort of serious about asking, and it did start to spell stuff out, and a bit like Adam said, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't really making any sense, and all of a sudden it just, this whole glass just screamed over to yes, and we hadn't really asked the question yet. So, and there was a couple of girls, and one of the girls was like really, as you said, like really pale and stuff, and we were like, what's wrong and stuff, and she said, I didn't ask the question, but I was about to say, is there anyone in particular you want to talk to, type thing. And this glass had already sort of slid out, and it might be coincidence. Remember what we went back earlier? What did it just? And anyway, so it slammed to yes, and then this girl was like, "Who do you want to talk to?" And it started to spell out her name. Well, literally, she, as you said, picked it up and just slat it. And I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck now going, and she literally picked this glass up and just threw it as hard as she could at the wardrobe, and it shattered and it made a hell of a bang, and it shattered. And literally, we were all like, excuse my French, like, what the fudge has just happened there, sort of thing. And again, I'll happily go through any lie detector test sort of thing. Yep. Was it coincidence? Don't know. Did the glass move? Don't know. But she was convinced, and I think the fact that she was convinced was enough to convince us, if you know what I mean. And that she was white as a sheet, and literally started to spell out her name. Don't get me wrong, I think her name was Victoria or Vicky or something. So, and it started to spell it out, and literally she didn't let it finish, and she just picked it up and just slapped this, and we were just like, not doing that anymore, and literally, spooked, absolutely spooked.
Yeah, and her experiences, like you said, Adam had his situation where he was talking about his story, and he had the hairs on the back of his neck. You've just gone through a story,
literally,
and your hair,
just relaying that literally there, I can feel it.
This is so meaningful to your psyche that even now, it still makes your hair stand up and go, wow, that's still an incredible experience. I have never done a Ouija board. They scare me. I don't believe they are things to be trifled with or messed with. There's enough stories of things happening where you have to open a door and then you have to close the door to make sure the spirits don't stick around or follow you home or do other things that they shouldn't. If in the interest of science, if we do this, which we do, then I'll do one. Why not?
So Interesting there, but again, you're talking about opening gates, closing gates, very Lovecraftian, which we opened up talking about there earlier. So, is that something we'd be interested in? Ken says, "Go on, maybe." Gaz,
maybe, yeah. I having only really done something as a silly little kid and stuff, but being part of one that even now when I'm talking to it, Ken made the point, it still makes me not nervous, but the goosies, the energy that don't know would I go to the old hall? Would I go into room 11? Would I experience that? Yes. Yeah. Would I be prepared to sit down knowing that I've now got a wife and 2 kids and wouldn't want to anything to happen? Okay. Yeah. Circumstances are different now, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? If you asked me when I was a 12, 13-year-old lad who's like, yeah, let's do it. Whereas circumstances change now and you think, you know what, if there is something, what if? Don't know.
I'm happy enough to vote that one down. Ken's placed enough doubts in my mind. You've got doubts in my mind. Like I say, I got young kids too. It's not something I want to chance. Andy, what are your thoughts on
them? I'd be up for it, but I'm not invoking peer pressure here at all. So. No.
The stakes higher as an adult. They're much higher as now because as a kid you're fearless. You're immortal.
Yeah, it's very true.
You're not going to take anything with you, and if something does follow you, all right, that's a couple of beers, and nothing's going to happen to me. As you grow older, the more rational side of you, which is something Gaz spoke about earlier on, just says, what if? What if something is there? What if something does happen? What if we do it and somebody, and God forbid I would hate anything to happen to you guys, but if I brought home something that was malevolent and Sam, or did something in the house that scared Sam and Sam wouldn't stay, and all that sort of stuff. And you hear stories all the time about possessions and demons and people being taken over by their mental state for wherever long it is, taking over them, and they go on a murderous rampage, or they start drinking and doing hard drugs, and their life just spirals out of control. The rational side of your brain as an adult thinks there's too much to lose now. As a kid, but the stakes are far, far higher as an adult. I'd do it. I'd be, as I said, Andy's happy if he's happy to do it, and if, as Gaz said, I've never done it before. I've seen enough horror stories to see that they could be problematic, but in the interest of science and at least saying I've done one, I consider that I've actually experienced it. I've done it myself. Nothing happened or something happened. Yeah. I suppose in that respect, I have to sit there and say I can't call them out or people who've done them if I haven't done them myself. So, in the interest of science, why not?
I would be skeptical, having done a couple of mess about ones, and then one that I actually not was done correctly, but I actually felt as though something not happened to me. I was part of the group of people that were there. And it didn't happen to me, so it's not personal to me. But this girl was obviously very personal to her, and I think it was as I said, I think it was the effect that it had on her that then had the effect on everybody else. It wasn't, we all didn't feel anything per se, other than her reaction to something that she'd felt. And she felt enough to pick the glass up and smash the glass. And it was the smashing the glass. And literally we were like, what the fudge was. And I think it's more what the fudge was about to happen. If we'd have let that line of questioning, you go down the route of, are you malevolent or not? Yes, no. Do you mean anybody harm? Yes, no. What happens if that goes to yes? It's like, oh my God, holy shit, what's going to go? What's next? Do you know what I mean? And I think the older you go, if I went next door and I said, Jenny, actually, the four of us are going to get together and we're thinking of doing a Ouija board in a haunted place. A, she'd say, I think you need marbles looking at. And B, she went, well, no, you're not, because you've got 2 kids.
Yeah, I think Kim would say something similar. I do think Kim said.
And as Kim said, if we were four 13, 14-year-old lads, fearless, got the rest of your life in front of you, the world is your oyster, and we'd be like, yeah, crack on, we'll get, we'll drink a couple of beers underage, we'll do a Ouija board, happy days. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now, I think you are more in the realms of actually. It's the circumstance and actually the consequence of what if, and Kenn hit the nail on the head, is that what if What if we did something in that room 11 and actually we left something in that room and like the next person that stayed there had an experience, and you'd be like, shit, was that us? Did we do that to them? Do you know what I mean? And it's the consequence of your actions that I think as you get older, you start to worry more about the consequence of your actions and actually the consequence you might have on others. So I would be more leaning towards I probably wouldn't do that. That's not to say that if you three decided to do it, I would question. I don't think I would, but I would certainly question you the following morning as to what was your sensation? Did you feel anything? What was it? Do you know what I mean?
No, this is a group decision. I ain't going to push someone down a route they're uncomfortable with. I'm just chucking it out there. Actually, It's been quite an interesting debate on it, actually, more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Go on, Andy. I want to know what's going on in that bull noggin of yours. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I was thinking of past films. There's quite a few horror films in it. It always stems from a Ouija board. But on the flip side, because it's sort of like an unknown, and people fear the unknown. What if it actually is like another dimension or whatever? People saying, like, recycle more because you're gonna kill the earth or something like that. Could be a positive side to it. But
I mean, I know the stories of people that have through Ouija boards have spoken to grandparents, great grandparents that, and I'm sure lots of people have had positive experiences about it, and they've got to have one final conversation, or she just wanted to let me know that she loves me and she'll always be looking after me, or whatever it when you hear these, and you whether or not you get this all seeing, all great watcher coming down saying you must recycle more type thing, but I think it's the because we going back to what we said earlier about society, and it's the fear of the unknown. It's actually, what if? And you could say, what if it's good? But then the flip side is actually, but what if it isn't?
Yeah.
And it's that consequence for me that just plays a bit too heavy on me at the moment for doing it sort of thing. So
I think if you asked 100 people what they thought of a Ouija board and gave them a bad or good, I think 98% of them would say bad. Yeah,
100% or 98%. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, we talked about recycling more than I expected that we would as well tonight, to be fair. So interesting concept now, because we're looking at maybe is the old hall, is somewhere in Macclesfield. We can look at both of those as places that we could go and actually and I'm really keen to get out there and do a podcast from, especially one that's not socially distanced from there, to make sure that we do it sensibly as well. Whether it's going to be in the future when we do, there's a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I don't know, but it's something I'm really, really very keen on doing, because it's something that's fascinated me, and I do think this is something that forces potentially the four of us to actually go out and have a crack at doing something just a little bit different, a little bit outside of our day jobs.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end then of this episode, and this is definitely going to be a part 2, part 3, part 4 going forward. I don't doubt we're going to do more unexplained ones in the future. So, final thought then, at the risk of sounding like Jerry Springer. Go on, Andy. Where do you sit then in terms of the thought of looking further into these matters?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's interesting hearing your stories, and then what, not only like of what you've experienced, but then how you probably think about that moment. You probably change stuff about in your lives because of that. It's quite interesting. I don't know. It's I was trying to think back if I've heard anything like that, and I don't think I have. Maybe I'm too closed-minded, but I like to think I'm open-minded. Don't know. We'll see in part 2.
Yeah, definitely. Gaza?
Yeah, more than happy to do a part 2, part 3, and discuss this further. Obviously, me and you had, and I didn't know Kenn, you had it as well. But obviously, we've had a long-standing sort of interest in the occult and the sort of supernatural stuff. So, I'd be keen to see if we could experience something. I say the Ouija board side, probably not. But yeah, 100%. I'd be happy to pick Kenn's brains again and get a couple of other people on that have experienced X, Y, or Z and see what their thoughts are. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, moving forward, 100%.
You'll have to dust off the cards and update the phone number.
Yeah. No, actually, funnily enough, my mum and dad actually still have the same phone number. So, if you have one of those cards, give them a bell. They'd love to hear from you. But just on that, actually, this is another concept for a podcast which I jotted down and I forgot about until you said that, actually, Gaz. Like I say, the people in Macclesfield called in Wythenshawe paranormal investigators, but there's one actually based in Stoke. Would it be worth getting those guys on, perhaps having a chat with them between the four of us? Is that something to be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because it's another perspective, isn't it? It's another. It's somebody that obviously has an interest in it. It's somebody that obviously, whether they do it as their day job or it's just a slightly more serious hobby. But it would be interesting to just recount some of their experiences and see whether they have a slant on maybe mine or Ken's experiences or yours when you're working at the manor. I think anything that tries to explain stuff that at the moment we can't explain, I think most people would want that. Do you know what I mean? If somebody was able to say to me, actually, this is the reason this happens and this is the reason this happens, and obviously Andy, being the slight skeptic amongst us, would have more of that evidence that would suggest that these are the reasons why. And it could go back to what Ken was saying about your energy transfers, your physical location, your atmosphere, your temperature, and all of those sorts of things. I think the more people that you can get on that have a knowledge of that and can talk about that from a more professional standpoint, crack on, happy days with that.
Cool. And Ken, obviously, I don't doubt you're going to be keen to be involved in this one, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting, and always has been from the time. Human beings, as a general rule, are inquisitive beings. They're inquisitive. They want to know more. They want to learn more. They always have a thirst for knowledge. They want to. The unexplained is the eternal quest for knowledge.
That's very true. You hit upon something there. There's a reason why we became the most successful creatures on the planet, and that is the Inquisition, the fact that we wanted to learn more. And that is the final frontier, at the risk of sounding like Star Trek again, which we mentioned a few times now. But it's that last bit of understanding.
Just a side note, to segue beautifully into your Star Trek thing, is that William Shatner hosts a TV series called The Unexplained.
He does, and it's interesting. I'm doing a bit of reading about the unexplained and stuff, and you do a Google search and put The Unexplained, and the first thing that pops up is William Shatner's face, and you're like, how does that happen? I remember as being TJ Hooker.
Our goal is to be second on that search. That's
the podcast for a different age there, I think.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because just before we started recording this, sort of Jenny, my wife, and Amy, they were watching Unsolved or Unexplained Mysteries and stuff, and the story about this French family and stuff. And there's a series on Netflix, which are quite good. They're about 50 minutes long, something, and it talks about. And a lot of them turn out to be they're probably like a murder case or a disappearance case or whatever. But actually at the time, people felt as though it was really unexplained and stuff. And as I say, I was doing my research and you type The Unexplained in and it comes up and you got William Shatner who hosts this series of unexplained events effectively. So I was like, wow, that's a lovely little segue there. I like what you did there, you two. Brilliant.
Unplanned, that was. Unplanned. So I think actually, this feels like we set it up nicely for a part 2 in the near future. So before we go then, Andy, would you like to say your goodbyes for this week?
Yeah, it's been good to be a part of this episode. I thought it's going to be one where, I don't know, I won't be involved in too much, but yeah, it's good hearing your experiences and stuff like I said earlier.
Actually, I think your involvement in this is integral. Because of your stand. No, I'm deadly serious.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It does, because of your standpoint and your viewpoint. I'm not trying to convince you. And if you think it's all bullshit, then that's fine. It's okay to think it's bullshit. And there's part of me that thinks that might just be the case anyway. But we need somebody who isn't totally open to the idea, because if we were to experience anything particularly unusual or peculiar, it's your opinion that would matter most, rather than the three of us who are a little bit more bought into the idea of it. Would we agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think on the spectrum of, you've got Andy, who is the effectively total non-believer. I think you've probably got Kenn, the other end, who is 100% believer that there is something. I think I'm probably slightly over halfway towards actually there must be something. And I think you're probably sitting possibly in the middle, maybe just fractionally towards Andy's side, sort of thing. So I think you've got the whole thing sort of covered. So I think if something did happen, Andy absolutely has, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the voice of reason type thing. Do you know what I mean?
To be fair, on Nights Out, he's always been the voice of reason.
But I think, I think you're right. I think he would be critical in effectively playing devil's advocate. Is that Kenn would be going, oh my god, and I'd be like, yeah, and I think, and Andy's like, what? It's just whatever. Do you know what I mean? And being the layman in it. So I think it absolutely, and it sets it up, I think, beautifully for our, one of our first sort of Tall Boy Radio outside broadcasts, and we do an OB somewhere, and but I think we need to just get out of this sort of COVID rubbish and stuff so that we can all be together and experience it. But yeah, absolutely, it'd be brilliant.
I look forward to you trying to give me the willies.
Absolutely. Gaz, do you want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, I love this episode. Again, off air before we started, I said to Adam, I might not contribute more, but loved Kenn's input into it. Didn't realise that he'd had a similar sort of experience as to I have had. Didn't really expect to talk about my experience in as much perhaps detail and with as much sort of meaning as I have. Something obviously quite personal to me, and Kenn shared a similar sort of story. So thanks to Kenn for that, and brilliant. Loved it. Look forward to where this sort of line of podcasts might go. So yeah, all good. Look forward to the next one.
100%. Kenn, give us your goodbyes, dude.
Again, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the invitation. I'd like to just echo exactly what Gaz said. I think I've always had in my mind what happened to me was always a very personal experience to me, and I think it's been a magnificent discussion and conversation to be part of. And as Gaz said, I'm looking forward to part 2, 3, 4, however many podcasts this becomes as a series. It's been magnificent to have that conversation just with Gaz to say, actually, I'm not just having this experience by myself. Somebody else does get it. And I think that's part of the discussion, is that the more you talk about it, the more people sit there and say, actually, yeah. And then more people talk, and then more people get involved, and the more voices, as Andy points out, the more voices you have involved in the conversation, the more information, the more knowledge you can get from that. So thank you to Gaz for sharing that story. That was very moving, because it echoed what I already felt. And I appreciate you sharing that, Gaz. I didn't know that had happened to you. In the same instance that I obviously didn't know that Adam, you'd experienced that sort of thing, or something similar that happened to you with regards to an unexplained event. And thanks to Andy for being a voice of like not 100%. Yes, I believe in this, and actually just being a genuine, level-headed, like, well, maybe not. It's been brilliant to be involved in, and I look forward to the next episode.
Cool. I'd echo all that, to be honest with you. I thank both Gaz and Kenn for sharing some very personal experiences as well, because they are very, very personal to the two of you. And actually, this episode for me is absolutely whipped by. I'm looking at the number there in the corners, how long we've been talking, and it feels like we've only just got started, which is why it does feel like it's going to run and run and run for a couple of episodes. And hopefully, if you're out there, you're listening to this and you've enjoyed it, you'll join us for those other episodes, and hopefully for a few others in between. So until next time, when no doubt we'll have plenty more stuff to talk about. Take care.